Britain built some of the most iconic cars in history. Jaguar, Land Rover, Aston Martin. Names that commanded respect on both sides of the Atlantic. But for every legend, there were cars that crossed the pond with enormous ambition and crashed spectacularly. Some failed quietly, vanishing from dealerships without a whisper. Some nearly destroyed companies that had stood for decades. And one was just embarrassing. Today, we count down 10 British cars that completely flopped in America. The stories are fascinating, painful, and sometimes unbelievable. If you enjoy stories like this, stay with us, because this list only gets worse. Number 10. Triumph TR7. The Triumph TR7. It arrived in America in 1975 with serious expectations riding on its wedge-shaped shoulders. Triumph called it the shape of things to come. America wasn't so sure. The TR7 was supposed to replace the beloved TR6, a car American buyers genuinely loved. But instead of improvement, buyers got a catalogue of problems. The build quality was notoriously inconsistent, partly due to industrial strikes plaguing British Leyland at the time. Electrical gremlins were constant. Reliability became a running joke among owners. And the styling, that aggressive wedge design, divided opinion sharply. Some loved it. Many didn't. But that wasn't the real problem. The real issue was trust. Once American buyers lost confidence in a British brand, winning it back was almost impossible. The TR7 damaged Triumph's reputation in the United States severely and permanently. And what came next on this list only made things considerably worse. Number 9. MG Midget. But the TR7 wasn't the only British sports car to disappoint American buyers. The MG Midget had been a staple in American showrooms since the 1960s. It was small, charming, and affordable. Americans adored it. Do you remember seeing one parked on a quiet suburban driveway? But by the mid-1970s, something changed entirely. American emissions and safety regulations forced British Leyland to detune the Midget's engine dramatically. The result was a 1.5-litre Triumph engine producing a pitiful 50 horsepower. That's barely enough to merge confidently onto a highway. Imagine driving this in American summer heat, with no air conditioning and no real power to speak of. It gets worse. The rubber bumpers bolted on to meet US safety standards made the car look clumsy and awkward. The Midget that once charmed America had become a slow, ugly shadow of its former self. The next car tried something bolder and failed just as badly. Number 8. Austin Marina. If the Midget frustrated buyers, the Austin Marina genuinely bewildered them. This was supposed to be British Leyland's answer to the Ford Cortina. A sensible, reliable family car for everyday American life. It launched in 1971 with cautious optimism on both sides of the Atlantic. But that wasn't the real problem. The Marina was outdated almost from the moment it was born. Its suspension design borrowed technology from the 1940s Morris Minor. In 1971, American buyers expecting modern engineering found something decidedly ancient underneath. And the build quality was genuinely awful. Panels misaligned from the factory. Rust that arrived before the car had barely left the dealership floor. Would you trust a car that was already rusting before you finished the paperwork? Sales collapsed quickly and completely. British Leyland quietly withdrew the Marina from the American market without ceremony or explanation. And this is where things on this list really start falling apart. Number 7. Rover 3500 SD1. Now we move into more ambitious territory and considerably bigger failures. The Rover 3500, known in Britain as the SD1, was genuinely exciting. It won European Car of the Year in 1977. A sleek, modern executive saloon that could genuinely challenge the Germans. Britain was proud, and America seemed like the logical next step. But this is where things fall apart completely. By the time the SD1 reached American showrooms in the early 1980s, it arrived with a reputation already badly damaged at home. Quality control at the manufacturing plant was catastrophic. Cars were poorly assembled, with interior trim falling away and engines proving chronically unreliable. American buyers had compelling alternatives: BMW, Mercedes, even Volvo. Why choose something that felt demonstrably half-finished? The Rover 3500 lasted just a few painful years in the US market before quietly retreating. A genuinely beautiful car, broken by the very people who made it. Now wait until you see what came next. Number 6. Triumph Stag. Speaking of beautiful cars broken by poor execution, meet the Triumph Stag. On paper, this was Britain's answer to the Mercedes SL. A stunning V8 Grand Tourer, designed by Giovanni Michelotti, with genuine presence and dramatic style. American buyers were intrigued. This felt like something truly special. And that's exactly what made what followed so deeply painful. The Stag's engine was a catastrophe. The bespoke 3.0-litre V8 overheated chronically. Head gaskets failed regularly. Timing chains snapped without warning. Dealers couldn't fix the problems because the problems were fundamental, not cosmetic. Owners were stranded constantly. Repair bills were brutal. Warranty claims piled up faster than Triumph could handle. Do you remember hearing about Stag owners who fitted an entirely different engine just to keep the car moving? That tells you everything. The Stag could have been a genuine legend. Instead, it became an expensive cautionary tale. And the next car is even harder to defend. Number 5. British Leyland Princess. What came next wasn't just a failure, it was an identity crisis on wheels. The British Leyland Princess, launched in 1975, was designed to compete in the executive saloon segment. The styling was genuinely striking. That distinctive wedge shape, penned by Harris Mann, turned heads for all the right reasons. But underneath that bold exterior sat all of British Leyland's worst instincts. Assembly quality was wildly inconsistent. Some examples were acceptable. Others were genuinely alarming. And then there was the Hydriga suspension, innovative in concept, deeply problematic in practice, and almost impossible to service at most American dealerships. Imagine taking your car to a garage and being told nobody there can fix it. It gets worse. The Princess never received proper American market preparation. It was withdrawn before it could truly establish itself. A car that deserved better, ultimately destroyed by the company that built it. And the next mistake is even more baffling. Number 4. Austin Maxi. By number 4, the pattern is becoming painfully clear. Britain kept sending cars to America without truly understanding what Americans wanted or needed. The Austin Maxi is perhaps the clearest example of that fundamental disconnect. Launched in 1969, it was genuinely ahead of its time in several ways. A practical hatchback with fold-flat seats, long before most rivals offered anything remotely similar. Britain thought America would embrace the practicality. America thought otherwise. The Maxi's styling was ungainly and deeply awkward. The 5-speed gearbox, genuinely innovative, had a gear linkage so imprecise that frustrated drivers called it stirring porridge. Imagine trying to shift smoothly on an American freeway with that sensation beneath your hand. The interior quality was poor, even by the era's modest standards. The dealer network couldn't support it properly either. Americans who bought one often couldn't get it repaired. Sales were negligible. The Maxi quietly disappeared. But what came next was far worse, because someone tried to disguise the problem entirely. Number 3. Austin Allegro. Because disguising British Leyland's problems had become something of an art form by the mid-1970s. The Austin Allegro, known affectionately in Britain as the All-Agro, was one of the most ridiculed cars in British automotive history. And somehow, British Leyland still attempted to sell it in America. This is where things fall apart completely. The Allegro was supposed to replace the successful Morris 1100. Instead, it delivered poor handling, questionable build quality, and the infamously strange quartic steering wheel, a square design with rounded corners that absolutely nobody had requested. Would you trust a car with a square steering wheel to protect you in a serious crash? Neither did American buyers. The Allegro lasted barely a year in the US market before retreating quietly with nothing to show. It became a symbol of British Leyland's total disconnection from reality and from its own customers. and it set the stage perfectly for what comes next. The next car wasn't just a flop, it was deeply personal. Number 2. Triumph TR8. Personal, because the Triumph TR8 represented something more than just another car. It was supposed to be the model that finally saved Triumph in America. The TR7's far more capable sibling, fitted with a Rover V8 engine to finally deliver the performance American buyers had always craved. And honestly, it was significantly better. The V8 genuinely transformed the driving experience. Real character, genuine pace, more than enough to compete respectably with American alternatives. But that still wasn't enough to save it. And this is where things get truly sad. By the time the TR8 arrived in meaningful numbers, Triumph was already dying from within. British Leyland was collapsing under its own weight. Dealer confidence had evaporated completely. Buyer trust was long gone. The TR8 never had a genuine chance, not because it was a bad car, but because the brand around it had already failed catastrophically. Only around 2,700 were ever built. It deserved so much better. But nothing compares to what comes next. Number 1. Sterling 825. Because number 1 isn't just a story of failure. It's a story of ambition, arrogance, and the most public humiliation in British automotive history. The Sterling 825. In 1987, the Rover Group launched the Sterling brand specifically for the American market. The Rover 800, rebadged and repositioned as a genuine premium alternative to German luxury. The boardroom believed they could directly challenge BMW and Mercedes on American soil. Which surprised you more, the ambition, or what came next? The reliability issues were catastrophic from the very first year. Consumer Reports ranked the Sterling among the least reliable cars available anywhere in America. Electrical failures, chronic rust, and virtually non-existent dealer support, everything collapsed simultaneously. Owners were furious. The press was merciless. By 1991, the Sterling brand was dead. Rover never recovered its American reputation. Britain's single greatest automotive embarrassment, exposed for the entire world to see. Which car on this list surprised you most? Drop it in the comments below. I genuinely read every single one. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Britain Rewind for more forgotten British stories daily. We'll see you in the next video.